Live. Hi everyone, I'm really excited to host Damon Hernandez, President of SimLab, founder and executive director of AEC Hackathon, and co-founder and director of technology at Idea Builder. I have been following Damon for a while, and this is a great opportunity. I am very excited to host you.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
So, Damon, I have been tracking the history, and you have been talking about spatial web technology and 3D models on the web like a decade ago. So tell us how you got there and what were your initial interest after you graduate.
Yeah, sure. I got involved in Web3D after reading a book called Snow Crash in 1999. And that's when I got really excited about this idea of what would a digital world look like that much followed the same as the book. And then at that time, just being a fan of architecture, even though I'm not an architect, but just being a fan of that, I kind of thought, wouldn't it be cool if you had this idea of where the real world meets the digital? And with that, I'm going to have to pause for a moment because this is excuse me. Hello? Many apologies about that, good sir. And we'll have to also at the end reshoot that because I recently left SimLab, so I'm no longer president there. But we'll go over that at another time. Um, but back to the idea of the metaverse. Back in '99, after reading Snow Crash, I got the idea of what would it look like. Again, a little pre this, but now using this analogy of if you were to take Google Earth and Xbox or PS5 and merge those two together, what would that look like? What would it look like if you could go into a web browser, see the world, zoom all the way in, and kind of see its digital twin? And then the 3D world part of World Wide Web. Uh, being someone who looked at the applications, I thought that would be very cool applications. I actually dropped out of university at that time because I was interested in being a lawyer and thought that this would be a way cooler pursuit. So I became a self-taught front-end web developer that focused mainly on using VRML and X3D, and then building interactive 3D environments to essentially see a for education. My parents were educators, and then also to follow this idea of the built environment in the 3D world part of World Wide Web. So it wasn't until 2006 that I was able to meet. Meet is I met him beforehand, but I say really able to get to know because I worked with him. A great guy named Tony Parisi had a startup at the time that was focused on the virtual worlds. So I was coming into this idea of Web 3D and immersive interactive 3D experiences um, back in the early 2000s, and then really saw what we see now is kind of happening again and then just that overall excitement. And then in 2007 is when I was able to connect with essentially a builder, a home builder, who was interested in using digital fabrication, subtractive digital fabrication, and then interactive 3D technologies to build homes more efficiently. And so that brought me into the built environment professions. And then from that small little boutique firm that still manufactures homes and things like that, I was able to connect with a lot of the bigger companies, especially back in 2007 through 2010, 11, that were trying to explore both the interactive 3D. Hey, we have this 3D data. What are the many things that we can do with it, and how do we do it? And then also the digital fabrication aspect of it. So that's just kind of what took me through and has been the theme of the career.
That's amazing. And I always wonder at that time there were very less people talking about this kind of things. So how you found your tribe and what are the things that help you learn uh, various technologies in this space and advice for people who are navigating in this space.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm very fortunate because even though I came in kind of late to the game compared to these other people, um, you know, everyone that I've ever interfaced with in the Web3D community has always been very supportive, right? And I think that's what was awesome is that it's like those people who you can talk to who are like, yeah, I used to visit the internet each night just to see what new sites were added, right? And so with that, I have been very blessed because I came in at a time to where I stand on the shoulders of giants, yet I get to call a decent amount of them friends, and so with that, the I found my tribe because my interest and my passion took me there, but then it was equally as receptive of people who were just like, yeah, come on, like check this out. And we're super supportive. So that's why, now paying that forward is why, I'm more than happy to as people come and I understand it now because I would look at these people and be like, wow, you built this backbone that everyone uses. No one knows who you are, right? But you're taking the time to help me. Like this is awesome. And then and now a lot of that does have to do with geographically where you are. Less now because the pandemic put everybody in a box. So I guess with the advice that I would give people that are coming out into the field, reach out to your heroes, right? Reach out to the people that you want to learn from, no matter who they are. Worst case scenario, they're not going to answer you. But I think that's for me what was so amazing is that getting out there and understanding that like my passion is not going to stop me. I traveled the world and nothing has. I mean, I'll knock on your door if I need to get a hold of you. And so with that said, have that same kind of enthusiasm and passion and not only will life help you with the flow, but then the people that are involved. And so I think for me, that's the advice I would give is just stay strong to your convictions and then be open. I think that's the other part of it, right? Is it is symbiotic and no matter how clever one is, there's always someone who's way more clever. So a little bit of humility, I think, also goes a long way.
That's a great piece of advice. You mentioned about Web3, and also there is a big buzz around metaverse. So, if you can share your definition of these two terms.
Yeah. Well, I'll start off with the easy one first. With Web3, I don't know. I've heard a lot of as a person who was able to be out here in Silicon Valley for Web2, and then to hear, of course, then people are talking about Web3 and Web4, and this is back, when people are still trying to figure out Web2. It's very interesting to hear what it is. So I think it's a lot of unexplored land, and I'll get to the way I kind of categorize that is it reminds me of when Columbus discovered America, right? I think that the old world in this analogy was, Web 2.0 is kind of Europe, and you have now there's like an AR, VR, and then there are a few people who came over and they've discovered this new land called the metaverse, right? And what I feel that they discovered actually was like the Caribbean. Columbus didn't land on the continent. He landed, and then so of course the people on the continent didn't know that that was there. So a lot of the people who have been working with the metaverse and or this term from the snow crash, because I think that's what's been interesting is this evolution, how Neil Stephenson started it off. I always was a fan of seeing how a group of people came together in about 2007, 2008. This group called the Open Metaverse Roadmap that looked at defining it, and kind of more. They expanded beyond the virtual reality to include augmented reality, life logging, and mirrored worlds. So when I saw that, at that time, I wasn't all that much of a fan of social media. So I was like, wow, this really captures three of these elements. So for me, the metaverse and its definition is this ever evolving area that as the people who have already occupied this space all discover each other. Oh, wow, you're working on this part of it. That complements what I'm doing. What's been interesting to see are all of these people who come over, discover the Caribbean. Now they're calling it, oh, Web3, and it's bam. And then now, so they're throwing everything into that. They're sailing back to whatever is their platforms of announcement, saying, hey, there's this thing and I'm an expert. And that's why, I'll be the first person to say someone who calls themselves as a metaverse expert, in my opinion, is full of shit and changed my mind. So, because even the people that have been in the space for quite some time who are developing these things, they have never called themselves an expert because they understand that their tribe, whatever their rabbit hole they're down, is this small part of a much bigger community. And so that's why for me, I think it's interesting that these folks who come back, and then the other thing that's also interesting is to see the way that they're not repeating the lessons learned before, right? It's that new, hence the new discover. I want to see how many of the people in the Forbes or these others or the godparents of the metaverse, how many of these people were back in the virtual worlds days? Because now the only difference is that you have a nerdy device. I am one, but you have this device on your face. But other than that, it's the same idea of a multi-user 3D environment. So, so that's where I think there's a lot to learn. And so in my idea of the metaverse is no one really knows what it's going to look like, what it's going to be called, how it's evolving. Now we've identified these different ingredients that are big contributors. And then I think definitely Web3, as it evolves and gets better definition, I think as crypto kind of it's in a weird stage right now, right? I mean, like, I think the promise of what these things can be is very exciting. How they're being used now, it's like, okay, I need to see more because being in San Francisco Bay Area for 16 years, I've seen enough flash in the pans thing come and go that and then of course hanging out with construction, they're very much about, like, hey, show me something that works and get it done. Don't waste my time with anything else. So I think between those two things, I'd just be like, show me the proof of a good implementation, and then therefore show me the money, right?
Oh my God. Yeah, like it's very provoking the way you like define it. And I recall like you uh were describing it during one of the social night at AWEXR. I met you, and I wanna know your thoughts. Like, what are the trends you are seeing in this conferences in AR VR development, which AEC should keep an eye on?
Hmm. Um, well, as far as the advancements in the AR VR space specifically, for AEC, I think it's just the fact that the communication devices, right? Because even though I've never built a building or been involved, so I'm rather ignorant to, like, when I'm out there, I need this. But I've been, as a tech person for those people, it's a communication, right? That's what you're really doing. You're needing to communicate and see the data as quickly as possible so you can, and maybe even hands free in a super noisy environment, right? And so I think that for the visualization technologies, the advancements that we see that make it, more comfortable under a hard hat, something that's easier to do if you've got gloves on and or you're holding something, so I think there's certain things like that are coming out, and is on the hardware side of VR AR, the content creation tools to create those experiences, that excites me, right? People like yourself and then others, to see this growing amount of folks that come from an AEC built environment interest that are saying, hey, this is how you do this with Unreal, or like the awesome community behind like ifc.js, right? I mean, in all of these different things. So I think that the tools and the technologies that allow for the creation of interactive 3D experiences that can be seen through VR, AR, mobile, or others. That's exciting to see those advancements on, like, the glasses that will be coming out, the contact lenses. Again, the way that voice is getting better. I mean, that idea of kind of how can we take the brilliance really of the Shazam application and be able to filter out, pull up the, RFI for blank, but, and have that cut out all the other noise of the saw or the construction site, and all these types of things, right? So I think advancements in the technology in the AR VR space, it's definitely the content creation tools, and then the hardware itself is pretty exciting, and then the interface. That to me is some of the exciting advancements, and then for my own personal bias, just seeing the advancements in web technology. So being able to see where now Web3D, of course, is kind of a given. People like Forge or IFC.js or many others are starting to implement some level of model viewer in the browser, and then as the immersive web working group and others continue to work on that whole WebXR device API, how you can actually have those experiences then be able to be like, well, I don't quite get it in the browser. How can I bring it into the space or go into the space without having to download additional apps or anything else like that is pretty exciting.
Yeah, like speaking of like content creation, yesterday I was listening to a podcast from A16Z where they were mentioning about the cloud gaming uh, infrastructure and how we are seeing movement from using Google for internet of text search to YouTube of internet of video search, and now like internet of experiences where you will be hopping in. So I was curious, like for this creator economy, like, and we are as an architect, we have this 3D experience and 3D modeling capabilities. So how can we leverage this in this next coming up creator economy?
As far as like, forgive me, like creating assets, the ability to create assets, what is this going to be doing for the creator economy going forward?
Yeah, like how can architects thrive in this internet of experience or upcoming creator economy?
Oh, wow. Um, yeah, that's a great question. Definitely one that I would love to throw by my architecture friends. I think, uh, in my own opinion, I think it'll be very exciting because it'll expand upon what I think the architects can think about how the space is used. So, for example, I'm coming at you from a place in San Francisco that is kind of like if the metaverse were to meet, well, my apartment and a B&B, what would that look like? And then have the space, we're actually creating location based experiences that will be able to be used with the space and things like that. So I think that relating that to architecture, I think architects can explore more of not just, oh, this is a building and here's how, the flow of how people go through the building, but it's like, here's a building, here's the flow of how people go through a building, here's some proposed AR and VR experiences that will leverage this building, right? And then other technologies. I think one of the interesting things, because being involved with the AEC hackathons, I get to hear a lot of really brilliant minds from the industry come up with cool ideas. And I think one, that made me think of, oh wow, that's a new way that architects and content creators can look at going beyond just I've designed something here, and then maybe visiting it, but this idea of empathetic buildings. So with the AI and others going the way that it is, and so how much of this infrastructure is there? You have a building, it has security cameras. Those security cameras are hooked up to something like, at the time they were discussing, again, not my idea, but what these people were talking about, looking at Watson and its sentiment analysis and things like that. So, and then you could take all these other stats. So you could see, hey, it's Monday morning. The local baseball team lost. The company stocks are down. The Fitbit data that people opted in as they're coming into work. The security cameras see no one's really smiling. Everyone's kind of frowning. Everyone's sleepy because of the biometric data that's being sent. So how could the building then say, hey, I need to brighten the mood. So how does the building transform with either automatic blinds, music, temperature controls, all of this, and then monitor, engage? Am I improving the mood of the people all on its own, right? And I was just like, yes, that is awesome, So I think for architects, there's a lot of these tools that are being created now and put into a way that can expand it, not to just, hey, this is the type of life you can have in this building. It can be more of, this is the type of experience you can have with this building, with digital content in this building. So I think that that can be very exciting.
That's an incredible example. And I was thinking when you were describing, like, okay, so we have this content, we should know like the communication protocols for this interoperability, and also the format of that like the content. So for example, in 3D, like one can argue like it's not efficient to have all your Revit files into the metaverse. Like there's a lot of more information which you might not need. And then there are options like GLTF or USDC, or like even decision making on that. Like how would you like navigate right now if you were to create content format? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think the way that I've always looked at it, and that was a cool thing about working with fabricators and work, still is that that to me is, in my opinion, the best data because it's so accurate. Like everything has to be there because that's what's driving the machines that are milling and seeing that stuff, right? So with that, it's about structure your data in a smart way, knowing that it's going to use these different apps. When you're having that meeting between the owner, the architect, the general contractor, bring in that IT person whose job it is to look and say, hey, as this asset's created, we're going to structure data in a way to where as you need it, you only get this. As you need it, you only get this, and you get this. Now, is this a single source of truth? No. But I think it goes back to this is what the fabricator's data has. This is how we'll deliver this to you. And as far as Revit or these other things, you don't need all that data most of the time, right? Who needs to see all that information and all that detail? And so that goes back to the smart way. And this is where I would get a little frustrated with people, but you don't know what you don't know is I've seen and been able to put gigabyte size models on the web for quite some time. Now, was it the gigabytes of the model? No, but it was everything that the person needed to see because how the data was structured, you only called the elements that were relevant to their task or their permissions. So that's number one, right? Structure your data in a more intelligent way, right? Because if I'm the electrician, I don't need your Revit model. I only need the parts that are relevant to what I'm doing. So understanding how to structure your 3D data, that's number one. Number two, I've always been a fan of ISO standards, not this is what the industry uses, right? That's why I learned Vermal and X3D. That is the ISO standard for Web3D content, that's been governed by a standards organization, web3d.org, for over 20 years. So GLB right now is the standard. The other reason why the other one exists is because the fruit doesn't like to play well with other people and it's content pipeline thing, right? So ultimately, and then it's kind of funny how look at the people who created GLB, look at the create people who created Vernal and X3D, and so there's already these standards that exist, IFC and others. It's just people don't want to implement them or they don't do what people need them to do. So instead of making those better, they kind of reinvent their own. So not to go too far down that rabbit hole, but back to from the content creation side, I think if you structure your data in a smart way, have that data in GLB, right, or GLTF. These are 3D formats for those that aren't familiar with the acronyms. Then that's a good start for being able to say, hey, here's this data that I can throw down the pipe very quickly and get it out to that person who needs to see it.
Got it. And you mentioned about like AC hackathon, and for me, like when I was transitioning from like architecture design to tech role, like hackathons were the like exponential learning opportunities I got. So really appreciate like the the initiative, because it's like right now I tell all my friends that attend AC hackathon, no matter if you know coding or not, you learn so much from the people around you. So the question I always try to like understand is like we see a lot of cutting edge ideas from people in this hackathon, but we don't see the translation into startup or like making it big open source project or like scaling it up. Any thoughts on how we can get more of those conversions?
Um, Yeah, well, a couple things to touch there. I think, the a lot of the things that happen at the AEC hackathons that we see, since our whole idea for folks is to solve a Monday through Friday problem that can be implemented on Monday, that most of our solutions have been tools that have like better tools that have been built, not necessarily a business, right? And so for example, one simple little thing, this team, this guy said, look, I spend anywhere from 30 to 40 minutes at least a day that's lost loading Revit files. I'll load in a Revit file that's huge, takes 10 to 15 minutes. I'll leave, I'll come back. It didn't load. I'll try it over again, And so he was showing how this could be lost. Came with a team that essentially created a little background program, right? That just monitored. And so if your device was actually non-responsive, it would send a message to the IT to come and upgrade your hardware. He said, look, this will save us, you know, thousands of dollars of human hours a year in our team, and we have 50 teams across the company. Now, amazing solution. Will save that company hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not a business, right? And they open sourced it. It's called RAM Hack. You can go get it from the AEC Hackathon open source projects. So we do have, I think, more people come and they focus on that. Hey, this is this problem that I have. With then some of them say, hey, here's the problem that I have, and I'm going to turn it into a business. And then they come out and they create a business. Like, for example, our first um, business that came out of the AC Hackathon, builderbox.io, right? And they're still plugging along and doing great. So, and I think that's the other thing is as these people come out, they do get into the industry. Yet, what I think is interesting is that maybe as the hackathon, we can do a better job at promoting them to the rest of the community. As a volunteer program, it's one of those. It's like only so many hours in the day, but I think that would be definitely a way that they could help get that out. Now, what is nice about the AEC Hackathon community is that people are willing to try stuff. They're like, oh, da da da, just created this. Hey, let's try it. And not only do you get people that are open to give constructive criticism, right? It's not like you're trying to sell them this product, and if it doesn't work, then you've lost a customer. This is kind of like, one of your friends that's, beta testing something for you. They play with it, give you constructive criticism back. Yet I think what's neat is that it can be a global audience, right? So the perspectives that you get of someone that's coming from the Nordics or South America or whatever contributing. So that's pretty neat to help define not only your product, but to maybe identify a potential market, right? Because then that's something is if you could build a widget that no one in the US says there's any value for, but then all of a sudden if people in this other region are paying you for it, that's pretty awesome. So I think it's just helping promote these companies as they become companies. I think the next thing that's been exciting to see, and this is just in my own observation, the past several years, is the amount of money now that's being invested in construction technology. I mean, to see the way that when I would go to these huge firms, and it was like the money for technology integration was like in some department over here, and then there's like what they did, right? And then now to see that there's more of that merge happen to where they're already playing with the robotic dog. I mean, the built environment industry in I live in a bubble and I see it from a very rose colored perspective, but it innovates faster, I feel, now, more recently, than it ever has before, A. And then B, the amount of adoption that it has with these technologies of actual integration is better than gaming. Okay. And this is where I ask people, I challenge people who say, well, gaming's gaming pushes what is technically possible. Hey, if I can stream a game and everyone's trying to solve that idea of video streaming and 3D streaming, they'll solve that issue, and everyone else that deals with 3D data can use it for sure. But I still listen to gamers complain about the cost of a $300 headset. When I go to GDC, how many VR AR headsets do you see at GDC compared to an AEC conference, right? You
Yeah.
know, and then so that's what's interesting, and then going to those professionals, and I think for me this was a story I love to share because it was very impactful for me because it was something I didn't want to hear but I needed to hear when I went to this conference, and I mean you've seen this as well, right? I mean people will they showed VR or whatever as the gimmick to get you to stop by their booth, and then they try to sell you what their actual service was, right? So it's like, do the VR roller coaster, but then we're going to sell you our coordination software, right? And then like the next year after that, it was like, hey, here's our coordination software, and then here's what the R&D team at our company is doing with VR. And then like the next year after that, it was like, okay, here's our coordination software, and here's the VR element to, and so it's been interesting to see that the way that the industry has adopted these technologies and moved the needle. So as the industry is adopting and moving the needle, as money for construction technology is coming in, as these acquisitions of these companies now are happening, uh, that's amazing, right? Because that gets everyone excited. So now entrepreneurs are like, wait a second, construction technology, there's money in them there hills, right? And so to see in the past few years this shift over, seeing that there are more VCs that are specific to AEC, to see how there are more communities where you can go and connect, like you said, with people to learn a lot. I think the value of the AEC hackathon, the number one thing that we're hacking is people's mindset. Number two is the building industry. And then what's great about it for tech people is that if you make a widget, I have the best answer for a problem that doesn't exist yet. You can go to one of the events and then find other people who are technical, not the kind that are like, wow, augmented reality will change the future. People are like, no, we use AR, like it has value. So you can actually have people who are knowledgeable tell you or help you modify your application to help better service the industry. And so between having these things of, I've got people to make sure that I'm a product market fit. I've got a community of investors and money that's there, right? I've got people that can test it out. And then even for us, we're trying to shift now and provide kind of more things for startups because I've seen that now there are more people that are like, hey man, they're an architect, that person's a Unity developer, and I'm a guy, we have an idea for a company. What do we do next? And so even with the hackathon, that's why we're trying to now offer slowly, like these startup assistants and stuff like that. So a very long-winded answer of just saying that the time is kind of right now, and there are those elements in place to where I think it's a very exciting time to be an entrepreneur in the built environment sector.
That's great because I think mentorship apart from learning really helps
Mm-hmm.
the people, and the way you said it, like if we create a cool AR tool within the AC community, we get excited, but like when you talk to real expert, oh, it's we have done it 5 years ago, and then you get another kind of feedback. So having also the experts to validate and guide you is crucial. So one thing I have noticed is like when people start learning tech, let's say web technologies or AI in AC, then based on the current compensation structure in the industry, it's very tight for industry to retain that talent who have a lot more opportunities outside AC.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, forgive me. There was a noise there. Uh, Thought someone was breaking in. Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure, no problem. When so one is as in, let's say in AEC hackathon or other places, you are educating and onboarding people into the tech.
Mhm.
Then once the people have those skills and they start learning more, many times the industry don't have roles to place those kind of technologists in the firms, and even if they have roles, sometimes they are not compensated well enough versus same person can go to a Silicon Valley job where they can earn double or something. How to retain or how to address that?
Yeah, that's a great question, man. Because I think that I have seen too many times where people in the built environment professions don't understand the value of tech. I mean, I literally had someone one time see an interactive 3D experience and say, "How much does that cost?" And when I told him that, that was, upwards of six figures, he was like, "Well, that's ridiculous. I can go into Best Buy and buy one of my kids' games for $60, and it has way more graphics than that, and does things." And I'm just like, "Oi." So I think, in one part, it's making sure that, the person understands the value of what that person brings and what their building brings to the company. And as we're better able to calculate, hey, having this IT person who's developing these solutions save us hundreds of millions of dollars a year or millions of dollars a year, then you understand the value of having this person. And then so that's number one. The retention, yeah, how do you compete if you're DPR and you think you're doing great because you're paying somebody 130, 140, $150,000 a year, and they can go get a job at Google clearing 200,000, with all the perks of working at Google and all of those kinds of things. That's difficult. But that's where I think that it goes back to people, again, like yourselves and myself, who our passion is in the built environment professions. I'll do what I'll do for free, and so if I can find that passion of that application, tech is just playing with ingredients. But if you understand the cuisine of what you're focusing on, and so I think that if you love AEC, you're going to work in AEC. If you're after the money, you're going to go to where the money is. And at this point in the industry, to be quite honest, I would rather have passionate technologists in the industry, because that will push it further than people who are just looking for a paycheck. Now, with that said, that retention is an issue. So that's where it's like, okay, value the people who are there. Although I have found that now the construction companies, the bigger firms, and of course we need to get that down smaller, but even the smaller ones are starting to understand the value of having a tech person, and not just to help them update Windows, right? So on the other side of that, I'm starting to see where people are like, okay, holy crap, we actually have to pay somebody to be in our office who's doing this. I mean, I can't tell you, I know well over a dozen young architects who are now Unreal Engine developers, because when they got their architecture studio, because they were like the new person, fresh out of school and were familiar, they got thrown on Unreal. And then they were like, I have way more fun with this. So I'm actually the VR person for our office, or I'm the blah, 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 blah for our office, right? So I think that as there's again, as more of the firms understand the value of technology, they'll understand, hey, we have to pay people for this, and then it's just a matter of figuring out how to retain the talent when it is kind of crazy in Silicon Valley. But I also think that those types of budgets will change, right? I also think that the days of someone being a fresh grad and then just getting some money thrown at them, that it's some crazy amount, will level out.
Especially with all the tech stocks going down and with hiring freeze. Uh,
Well, tech stock's going down. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, like code's going to be writing code. I mean, it already does. But I mean, and so this idea of being someone who sits down and, like, I'm going to write 10,000 lines of code, that will be just like the architect that was drafting, you know. Or the architect that even did 3D, because I remember a very interesting conversation I heard where people were talking about the idea of AI. And so if you told, essentially, if you went somewhere, gave certain permissions, yes, you can connect to my Facebook, my Pinterest, and other things, and AI could learn your aesthetic likes and then computationally generate for you a design that's hooked up to manufacturing, so you could select 1 through 5 knowing that they could be manufactured. So a lot of interesting stuff coming. But I think it just goes back to the value for folks that are coming out into the field. They need to understand that, yes, it is hard. But I would also say, there's a friend of mine told me one time, if you can't find a job, go make it. And there's enough out there right now to where these technologies are changing the way that construction is being done. If you can't find a role in an existing thing, Go take those ingredients, stick within the cuisine of built environment, and make your own job.
Man, that's a great answer. Maybe then in next AEC hackathon we should have one how to make a role for yourself in a in AEC workshop.
Hey,
How
done. You get to lead the workshop. I'll facilitate and make sure everything's all set up for you. I like this. I'll participate as well.
Oh
It's a
man,
great idea. It's a great idea.
I see. I recall like right before the session you were mentioning about your role at Samsung and the interoperable experiments you were doing. So
Mhm.
I'd love if you can share like what were the challenges developing those workflows and what are your takeaways at this moment? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, just to touch a little bit into that, but my curiosity, uh, especially from a built environment perspective. So the end user experience being, you and I are collaborating on a building together, but it's a very sensitive building, right? You know, building owner is either a government or someone that it's. So how do I use the biometrics on the device to authenticate that I am Damon? And so that way I can access the 2D and 3D data that's necessary. Now, depending upon my level of understanding of this comprehension, I can either do it in 3D on my device. I could go on 3D, on my tablet. So that way I can sync, as you can with any kind of web-based experience, and then and do what I need to do. If I still don't understand it, then I can sync the browser and my AR glasses with that. If you come in and you want to see what I'm working on, I can sync the browser on the TV with that. And so it's this idea of a multi-user or single-user experience that modifies depending upon the peripherals that I have, right? So I could sync. So if I use my phone and then sync it with the watch, so as you're looking at the TV, I'm turning the dial on my watch, which is rotating the asset, right? And so it was kind of this idea of what do secure multi-device experiences look like that are all brought to you by www dot because most people don't like downloading apps, can't download apps, don't like all the permissions that apps ask for. So it was kind of a lot of the fun I had there, in addition to being a product manager for the VR browser and the Gear VR headset. Was also focused around a lot of this enterprise level kind of solutions for secure web applications that had immersive components to them.
Whoa. And what were the challenges you faced while developing it?
Um, yeah, well, so yeah, going back to that, the challenges were what are examples of that exist already to follow, right? The number one challenge is, show me an experience where I could have a character pop up out of my watch, run around my house, jump in my TV, jump out of my TV, jump in my fridge, tell me what I need to eat, start yelling at me, and so the lights start flickering on and off. Show me these experiences that exist. And so number one, it was a design challenge. I am a student of experience design and user experience and user interface. Yet I know I'm not an expert, and so I would love to go listen to experts who build these types of experiences, but they don't. I don't want to say they don't exist yet, but send me, and anyone watching this, send me pictures or video links to people who have designed these types of experiences that are being used from the web. The second part of the challenge is that it's web, right? So for me to test some of these things, I have to have a HoloLens or things like that, and then browsers that support elements of WebXR. So there's the technical challenges of that. There's just the design challenges of having people to chat and work with, and and then I think just the creativity. I myself am not a really good experiential creator, and so it's much cooler. I think that's another challenge I have is just what would a cool experience be that could leverage all of these elements. Yeah.
I see. Is there anything you wish you would have done differently, or what would you say to 25-year-old Damon?
Invest in Bitcoin when you found out about it, $80. Uh, you know, um, you know, only because of the people I met, I would go back and say nothing. because I wouldn't do it any other way, right? Because everyone I've met is an amazing individual in my life, and so I think that that could have steered me from not connecting with them. I think what I would have liked to have pushed more is that understanding that as one follows what they're passionate about, and if it is greater than self, if your motivation truly, I mean, everyone of course has to make money, but I'm a firm believer that you can make change and you can do what you want to do, and a byproduct is money. Because if you do it well, you do it with passion, you're going to do it better than others, and then a byproduct is money. So I feel that if you what I would have told 25-year-old Damon is, hey, continue to follow what you're passionate about, because life will reward you along the way. The things that you look to do. I mean, the success of the AEC hackathon is a testament to why a person should not sit still. You know, to me, failure is inaction. It's not trying. It's, and that's the other thing that I think that as folks, as we come out of university or just in life in general, we forget that failure is a necessity of learning and improvement. And work somehow forgets that as well. If you fail, you cost us money, you may get fired, like you're not getting a budget again to do something. But show me one person who's gone out and done something the first time and did it right every time after that. So I think that would be the two things: is don't fear failure, 25-year-old Damon, fear inaction, and then just continue to realize that as you go forward, life does reward you in those ways of manifestation or whatever. So I think those would be the two things that I would go back and say outside of Bitcoin.
That's amazing. And I, like I was going through your LinkedIn and you have like so many different initiatives and roles. And even your website, one interesting thing, if people are listening and want to check out, you can experience in 2D, 3D, and VR. Like, I just wanted to bring that up. But uh, is there any side hustle or startup or initiative you wish you would have done or you would do right now if you have more time and resources?
Um, well, there's two that I'm actively doing. So I think that's the thing is, it's like don't want, just go do. So I recently just finished up about a year and some change at an amazing company based out of Poland, SimLab. A really good group of folks there. And to pursue my next endeavor is I'm going to Finland, a part of a program called 90 Day of Fin. And while I'm there, I look to connect with kind of the folks that are responsible behind Helsinki has this great 3D city model. So I have an idea. I don't want to say it's a startup, but it's definitely a project that could turn into something. But what I'd like to do is show how you can kind of make a very basic authoring tool. So if one were to think of Revit, this would be like a SketchUp, right? But how could you pull in essentially like a 3D city model? So in this case, it will be Helsinki's on something like Cesium, which is a digital world for those that aren't familiar with it, cesium.js. And then have this very basic authoring tool where you could just geolocate these points of interest with very basic information and then be able to view this all in web. And so like as an admin, I could build this very basic experience, geolocate it, publish it, and then someone could go to a web browser and then experience it just via a web thing and then open source that. But it's kind of a way to show how you can take from the more technical side of it, like to the end user, they're just going to see something that looks like Google Earth that's interactive. But from the more technical perspective, it's showing how do you leverage a lot of the open standards for the 3D world part of the World Wide Web, like City GML to create the city, IFC to create the buildings, WebGL, HTML5, some of these frameworks. I'll probably go with X3D just because it's an ISO standard, or maybe 3JS. I'm not quite sure, but that's relevant. But the point is that so how can you show, hey, all these standards do work together. All these standards do play well, right? I mean, everyone talks about standards and other. Oh, well, if they exist, let's put them in the pot, see how they work, right? So when I'm in Helsinki, the next endeavor I'm looking to do is to try to create this very basic authoring tool that leverages the types of web experiences that I talked about before, and then open source it. And so if some business ideas develop out of that, cool. But then the thing that I'm really passionate about, that is the to answer your question, is after that, my goal is to take a lot of what I've learned with the timber fabrication company, Cut My Timber, and with my time at Idea Builder, and then take the advanced building practices for timber fabrication I see in the Pacific Northwest, and take that back to my home state of Texas, and then essentially use robotic manufacturing and a lot of these immersive technologies to build homes better in Texas faster.
That's that sounds very exciting. And I was just thinking like for the pipeline for CZM, and GML, and like authoring, if you can also integrate like virtual avatars of people and you open source, or that would be fun too.
Well, I see, and that's the thing that I think is exciting about all of this, because even back in the day, that was one of the issues that one could do. You could take, and I have an example of this on YouTube, where you could take a three-dimensional world, and that was a part of an interactive solar system. So it worked on this thing of powers of 10. So you could go in a web browser, you could fly to the different planets, click on the planet, and you get a billboard of what that planet was. When you got to Earth, it was an interactive tiling globe that took you all the way down into a building, right? And then the avatar that could be in there was actually a 3D model scan of myself that I took of a volumetric. So I went in, got a CAT scan and an MRI, and then converted that. So in this interactive 3D scene graph, to your point, you had building data standards, you had city open geospatial consortium standards, all the way down to medical diacom file for the 3D geometry of us. So that's the cool thing is 15 years ago, you could take the 3D digital twin of you, the manufacturing building, and all these other things, and bring them into the same thing. So it's just helping folks remember, hey, we can do that now too. And so to your point, you're absolutely correct, good sir. Good avatars. Good avatars.
Yeah, I'm gonna wrap up the interview with a rapid fire question. We'll just have
Sure.
like 10, 15 seconds. Gotta make it brief.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which cities are in your travel bucket list?
Cities in there are in my travel bucket list. Argentina, um, uh, Moscow, and Rio. Those
Is,
three.
is there any business or technical book which made a big impact in your life?
Well, I mean, Snow Crash changed. As far as a technical book, oof, too many, too many.
I'm guessing it would be on some computer graphics.
No, actually, I think the ones that were most impactful, I think, were the ones that were around self improvement and then team leading. Because I think um, for me, our greatest challenge is our interactions with other humans, and how to make sure that those people, when we interact with them, hopefully leave with something more than they came with, feel respected and dignified. So I think for me, the most impactful books I've read are the ones on how to be a good leader or a good communicator.
Awesome. Your favorite movie?
Fifth Element.
Your favorite restaurant?
Sand tongues in San Francisco, dry fried chicken.
Your role model?
Um, wow, too many. Well, I guess I'll go. Well, there's too many that are living. That I'm fortunate to know. But I guess really just any person who really was able to sacrifice themselves for a greater cause. So yeah,
I see.
yeah.
How does a day in your life look like?
A day in my life. Definitely latte, jazz at some point, 15 minutes of sunshine, a lot of work behind a computer, and then just trying to make time to be present.
What is one thing which most people don't know about you, but will be surprised if you share them?
I used to be a bouncer at a nightclub in Texas
Whoa.
at 5'7". Right. You know.
I see. And what are your hobbies?
I enjoy playing piano, guitar, martial arts, and just web development. That's a lot of fun for me. So.
Lastly, is there anything which we didn't cover in this interview and you would like to share?
Well, I think I would just like to see more people that are exploring with technologies. Do see how, as I like to think of it, as there's so many different ingredients now that exist: AI, digital fabrication, reality capture, drones, robotics. All these things. Play with them, right? That's what I would like to see is just explore, yet always go and find that expert to help guide. Otherwise, you're just building technology for technology's sake. And so I think that that's something that is brought up as kind of, what is one of those, I don't want to say curse of the entrepreneur, but what are the things that can make it difficult as an entrepreneur is that, sometimes it's very easy for us to be surrounded by folks that don't know enough. So of course they want to be supportive, or they're the opposite way, right? So either they're like, yeah, this is awesome, or they're just like, I don't know who would use, because they don't know what they don't know. So those closest to us aren't the best. But if you are building a solution, or if you're like, what, I'd love to take this passion that I have for X and these other technologies, I would definitely say that, and then kind of tacking onto that in conclusion is don't be seduced by the ingredients. That's why if someone says, "Hey, I'm building a VR AR solution," um, I would humbly submit, no, you're building a solution that leverages VR and AR, right? But don't make it about the technology, because most people don't care. I don't care about the technology that makes my TV work. I care about the value that it provides my life, the programming that's on it. And so with that, I would just say that those things are helpful to keep in mind.
That's a great action item and like clarity about like what we are developing actually rather than like getting misguided or mistracked. Like that's a great. And for all people watching, like AC Hackathon is coming. Sign up and you'll get a chance to meet the amazing community and build some awesome stuff.
Yeah, hackaec.com. And there's a fun little augmented there's technological Easter eggs throughout that whole site that one just has to explore and try to find on their own. So that's the other fun part. But thank you so much for what you do and all the amazing interviews as well. I mean, I'm very humbled and honored to be included with the quite the cast of people that you have come on the show. So thank you again for that. Very appreciative.
I I it means a lot and I really appreciate your time for doing this. I know you have a super busy schedule, so getting these thoughts and sharing your life and process really inspires people like me.
Well, and likewise, and that's where if anyone, who is watching this, do reach out, right? I'd love to know what you're working on. I'll definitely continue to follow you, because I think that's the fun thing, is that we all explore and are growing together, right? And because so much of this technology is new, it again, it's very hard to be an expert, or it's very easy to have imposter syndrome, right? But I think that's where it's, again, just finding your tribe, and there's ever growing one out there, and then just sharing, because you know you continue to explore things, or will look at something that I have played with for years and then show me something completely new about it, and I know that because I've seen that with some of your things that I've watched. So just keep that communication and dialogue of sharing, for you, and then any of those other viewers, also share back with your mentors, and things like that.
Great. Have an awesome weekend, Damon, and
You